So let's continue with charging. So it is a process in which we can move electrons from one body to another body, or we can induce a charge on the bodies. We can make the bodies positive or negative. So there are mainly three ways to charge up any body. First is through friction, second is through conduction, and third is through induction. So what happens in friction is that when we rub something, you must have noticed, when you rub something, because of the friction, heat is generated. If you rub your hand quickly, you will notice that your hands will get heated up because of the frictional heat. So whenever friction is there, whenever we rub two surfaces, then heat is generated. So that heat can give the energy to electrons, and then electrons, after getting that energy, can jump out of the material. So one simple process is friction. Now another is conduction. So let's say we have already we have a positively charged object and we have a neutral object. So if we touch this object with this neutral object, what will happen? Few of the positive charges will jump onto this other conductor, and after we take it back, then few charges will remain on this original conductor and few will move on to this another object. So this is another way to charge object. It has become positive. Now the third way is to charge the object through induction. So in induction, what happens is that, let's say we have another charged body, and when we put this charge body close to another conductor, okay, do not touch it, just close to it. So again, because of the attraction and repulsion, the electrons will come towards this side and protons will go towards the other side. So now if you remove this, then what will happen? Again it will become neutral. But in order to make it charged up, you need to do what? You need to earth or ground the body. You will understand the concept of grounding in other chapters. So when we ground it, connect it with the earth, what happens is that the earth will provide some electrons and it will move here, and this positive charges will become neutral. So once you remove this object, what will happen? These have become neutral, so they do not give you anything to worry about. So ultimately what you will have net negative charges. Okay, so ultimately these are the three ways to charge the objects. Now first, in friction, touch is required. In conduction, touch is required. In induction, touch is not required, without touching. Now friction can be used to charge conductors as well as insulators. Conduction can be used for charging conductors as well as insulators, but this induction process is only for conductors. Okay, when the conductors are there, only then the electrons will come on this one side and protons on the other side. In insulators this will not be the case, because in insulator free electrons are not there. In friction, we do not require any of the objects to be charged initially. Okay, in friction none of the objects need to be charged initially. But what happens in conduction and induction? We require one of the object to be charged initially. Okay, we need at least one of the object to be charged up initially. But in friction, both the objects can be neutral initially as well. So these are few of the differences between the three types of charging. So after charging, again simply static electricity will be there. First process is you charge the object. Once the objects are charged, then these positive and negative charges will attract or repel each other based on the types of charges. For example, if same charges are there, they will attract. If opposite charges are there, they will repel each other. So now let's start with the main concept of electrostatics. So there are this few main topics: force, field, and flux, and potential. So and potential energy and capacitance. So these are the concepts that we need to understand in electrostatics. These are scattered in different chapters. So first we'll start with force and field, then we will move to other topics. Now what is the electrostatic force? So electrostatic force is given by the Coulomb's law. Just like gravitational force is given by Newton's law, electrostatic force is given by Coulomb's law. So Charles Augustin de Coulomb was a physicist, was a scientist, and he studied about the forces applied between two charged bodies. So what did he do? He took two charges, q1 and q2, and there was this distance r between the centers of the objects. So now what happened is that he observed that if we increase the value of q1, then the value of the force between the objects increase. If we decrease the value of q1, the value decrease. If we increase the value of q2, the force increase. If we decrease the value of q2, the force decrease. So that is when he decided that the force is directly proportional to q1 and q2. This means that if you increase q1 by 2 times, the force will increase 2 times. If you decrease q1 by 3 times, the force will decrease 3 times. If you increase q2 by 5 times, the force will increase 5 times. If you decrease q2 by 7 times, the force will decrease 7 times. So there is a linear relation. How the same, if you increase q1 or q2, force will increase by the same amount. If you decrease them, the force will decrease by the same amount. Now one more thing you observe is that the force decrease with the distance. Okay, more the distance, less the force. More the distance, less will be the force. So it was not that simple. He observed that the relation is 1 by r square. That is if you decrease the force 2 times, then the force will increase. Okay, if the distance decrease, then the force will increase, but how much? It will not increase by 2 times, it will increase by 4 times. Why? Because r square 2 square is 4, so force increase by 4 times. If you increase the distance by 5 times, then the force will decrease 25 times, because 5 square is 25. So this is what he observed. F is proportional to q1 q2 upon r square. This is what he observed. So this is the Coulomb's law, and once we introduce a constant, this constant is sometimes referred to as k. So you can also write this constant to be at the place of this you can write k. So when proportionality is removed, equal to comes, then a constant is there. So when there is any medium, then the formula is 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught q1 q2 upon r square, where epsilon is epsilon naught into epsilon r. What is epsilon? We will come to it in a moment. And when you are in vacuum, then the formula is 1 upon epsilon 4 pi epsilon naught q1 q2 upon r square. Why? Because in vacuum epsilon r is 1, so epsilon will only become equal to epsilon naught. So this is for vacuum, and this is sometimes written as k, so k q1 q2 upon r square. So the value of this term 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught is 9 into 10 to the power 9, and value of only epsilon naught is 8.85 into 10 to the power minus 12. These are constant for now. Just remember that these are the constant for now. What is the exact meaning? We will come to that in a moment. So okay, so let me again tell you what is Coulomb's law. It tells us that what will be the force of electrostatic or static electricity. It will be proportional to q1 q2 and inversely proportional to the distance between the square of the distance between them. That is, force is proportional to q1 q2 upon r square. Once we introduce a constant, we can have a medium. We can talk about vacuum or air. Air is approximately is similar to vacuum for electricity. So in that case we have two different formulas, 1 upon 4 pi epsilon, where epsilon is epsilon naught into epsilon r, and 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught. So what are these epsilons? So these epsilons tell us about the permittivity. So epsilon is the permittivity of a medium, epsilon naught is the permittivity of free space, and epsilon r is the relative permittivity. So what is permittivity? So if you notice that when you have, let me give you example of a magnet, because the same thing is applicable for a magnet and you will understand it better. So we want to discuss about charges, positive and negative charges, but you must have used the magnet. Because of that I am describing it using the magnet, okay, because it is similar. So let's say we have a magnet. If there is nothing in between them, then they will attract each other a lot. But if you introduce something like a cardboard, like a metal sheet, then the force of attraction will decrease a lot. So the force of attraction and repulsion depends on the medium. So similarly in electricity also, medium is important. So this permittivity tells us about whether the medium will allow the electric field to go or not. Okay, so permittivity of medium is epsilon. So relative permittivity is what? So when we discuss about the permittivity of any medium with respect to vacuum, when we compare with the vacuum, then we say that it is a relative permittivity. The vacuum permits the most, okay, vacuum permits the electric field most, and the metals are the materials which do not permit the electric field to pass through at all. So this epsilon is the permittivity, that how much electric field can go. Now this force, Coulomb's law, can have this vector form as well. So this is the vector form of the Coulomb's law. Okay, this is the vector form of the Coulomb's law. So we know that force is a vector quantity, it has magnitude and direction. So as discussed earlier, what we discussed was the magnitude, this was the magnitude, and let's say we are in vacuum. Now we will introduce a term for direction. This is a unit vector, this only has direction because its magnitude is 1. What is a unit vector? Whose magnitude is 1 and it only has direction. So now we have represented force with an arrow, that is for vector quantity. Force is a vector quantity. So this is the magnitude, this is the direction. Now important thing is that unit vector can also be written like vector upon the magnitude of vector. Okay, so what will happen, both the magnitudes will get cancelled out, only the direction of this vector will remain. So ultimately it is only a direction. So at the place of r cap we can write r vector upon r. So at the place of r cap, I am going to write r vector upon r. So again r into r square will become r cube. So it becomes r cube and this is r vector. So this is the vector form of the Coulomb's law. So do not get confused whether it is r cube or r square. Okay, it is r, the force depend on r square only. Okay, this is the main formula. But when we replace with the unit vector with the vector itself, it becomes like this. Okay, so do not get confused. Force depends on r square. Okay, force depends on r square. So this is the vector form of the Coulomb's law. Now what are the properties that were observed for the electrostatic force? So first, obviously electrostatic force is a inverse square force, that is it depends on the inverse of the square of the distance between the objects. If the distance increase 2 times, the force decrease 4 times. Okay, square. If the distance increase 3 times, then the force decrease 9 times. Electrostatic force is not a universal force. What does this mean? Because it depends on the medium. In every medium the value of electrostatic force is different, as discussed. Okay, the medium is very important here. So it is not a universal force like gravity. Gravity was the universal force, because if you notice, in gravity medium does not matter at all. If you are on first floor, if you have a medium in between you and earth, it does not matter, you will fall in the same manner. Electrostatic force is also a central force. Now what does this mean? It acts towards the center, that is the force of attraction and repulsion acts towards the center of the object. Okay, so the objects attract or repel each other towards their center. Okay, because of that this is called the central force. It is not like this. Okay, if we have two charges, they will not repel each other like this. Okay, like this, they will repel each other like this. So this is a the force is this central force. Electrostatic force is a conservative force, that is it is path independent. What does this mean? That let's say, if like in gravity, let's take the example of gravity. If I tell you to move this object from this point to this point, this height, so if you take 4 different paths, 1 2 3 4 different paths, so in which path you will require you will have more potential energy? So in all the cases the potential energy will be same. Why? Because mass is constant, g is constant, and h is also constant. You are taking the object at the same height, whether you go from this any path. Okay, so whether you have any path, the potential energy will be same, because the height is same in all. So in the forces in which the energies are path independent, the forces which are path independent, they are called conservative forces. So electrostatic force is a conservative forces. Only initial and final point are important in this. Next, electrostatic force is a long range force. Now what does this mean? It means that it can act up to infinity. So 1 by r square is there, so it will only become 0 when the distance is infinite. So it can act up to infinity. Okay, so this is a long range force. It can act in a small region, it can act at a larger distance as well. Okay, so only when r is infinity, force will become 0. So electrostatic force is a long range force. Now Coulomb's law is applicable for charges at rest. All these things, electrostatic force, it is applicable for charges at rest. And Coulomb's law is an empirical law, experimental law. That means it is not derived mathematically. Okay, we have not derived it mathematically. It is derived using experiment. We observe something in experiment and we wrote the mathematical equation. For example, Coulomb observed that Q1 changes the value of force. Experimentally, it was not derived mathematically from any other equation. And similarly Q2 and R square. So empirical law, Coulomb's law is empirical law or experimental law, not the mathematical law. Electrostatic force is much stronger than the gravitational force. Okay, it is approximately 10 to the power 39 times stronger than the gravitational force. You can check this by this simple experiment. If you have a magnet on the table, so this magnet is on the table because earth is pulling it downward, complete earth. But what happens if I put the another magnet near it? So what will happen is that this magnet will attract this magnet towards itself. So this complete earth will not be able to hold this magnet on this table, and this small magnet will attract this magnet towards itself. Okay, so this is how strong the electrostatic force is. Gravity is very weak. The complete earth could not hold the magnet towards itself. Now when we have multiple charges, the forces between the any two charges is independent of other charges. That is, let's say if I have three charges, let's say Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, any n number of charges. So the force between Q1 and Q2 will be same whether Q3 is there, Q4 is there, or Q3 or Q4 is not there. Okay, whether Q3 is there, whether Q3 is not there, the force between these two will be same. Okay, it will be F equal to K Q1 Q2 upon R square, where K is 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught. It is simple to write K instead of 1 upon 4 pi epsilon naught. So the presence of other charges does not affect the force between any of the two charges. So now we will discuss a few things after this. So just remember that these are the characteristics of the electrostatic forces. Now one more characteristic is that electrostatic force can be either attractive or repulsive, whereas gravity is only attractive. Electrostatic and gravitational force both follow the principle of superposition. Now this principle of superposition was also discussed in the waves. It tells us that the result, if you want to find the resultant force between multiple charges, then you need to find the force between individual charges and take the vector addition of all those charges. So superposition principle is this. We will further discuss in the upcoming lectures.